any violence, because there was no violence at all. And I think this is what we should, as Zimbabweans, cherish and continue to maintain. This is now shows how mature our democracy is. It is possible that even in a family, not all children become obedient to the parents. The parents will do their best to teach culture to their children, but some kids will continue to do otherwise. But they still remain kids of the family.
Take just one more person.
Thank you, Mr. President. Congratulations. My name is Farai Maputuya from China Global Television. After you won the last election, you reached out to your competitors and invited them to be part of Poland. First of all, was that an effective? Did it add value, that platform? And are we likely to feel the same going forward?
Talking about the past, I'm very, very happy that we created that platform, because the loving sons and daughters who love their country came to the table so that together we could share the structuring and vision for our country as a family. And I'm so happy that Poland did contribute immensely to the progress we have achieved during the past 5 years. I believe that the same facility, when I form my government, will be created so that again, as brothers move forward, our country, our economy, and our vision as a country sharing together. Thank you. Thank you.
There at State House during that question and answer session following the speech that he gave earlier, remembering that last night the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission declared President Emmerson Mnangagwa the winner of the 2023 presidential elections with 52.6% of the votes cast, and Mr. Advocate Nelson Chamisa of the CCC getting 44% of that vote. And we are analyzing the speech by the president as well as other issues to do with the outcome of the election and also the way forward. And Mr. Wengwere, I still want to get back to you in terms of what President Emmerson Mnangagwa just said. He acknowledged the fact that there was no violence during the elections.
Yes.
The preliminary reports given by various observer missions also acknowledged that important fact that there was no violence, or very minimum in terms of reportage of violence cases. How important, or what picture does this give in terms of the maturity of the people of Zimbabwe to be able to participate in elections without violence?
I think it's evident that to develop, you've got to be, firstly, you've got to be alive, and you've got to be able to connect with others who may be of a different mindset as yourself. So violence is really foundational to any national development, and that's correct. But what I also think the president acknowledges is that the diversity is not necessarily a bad thing. And therefore, even within the home, he said it, you'd have the mother, father on one side, and then the kids on the other side, but that does not make them a family. So a family develop because it has embraced its diversity. But I think what's better is to develop together.
President Mnangagwa made reference to the fact that he might recreate or establish a similar body to Poland, or maybe Poland will continue. Is that another extension to Advocate Chamisa to say, come to the table, come on board, and let's build the country together, in your view?
It would be ideal for this country, in my view, for contestants to actually realize that even if we oppose each other ideologically, but as long as we are in one country, we should have some common values and we must engage. Because in any case, we're speaking to the same Zimbabwean, isn't it? Whether the Zimbabwean is in the urban area or the Zimbabwe is in the so-called rural area, both matter. And unless we can then use our differences for the purpose of that individual, then politics becomes detrimental to economic development.
Some other key areas that did come up during the process of the elections were issues around data and dissemination of information. Quite a few concerns, most notably being those by the Zimbabwe Public Police, where just over 30 individuals were arrested. That arrest having been tied to the intent to be able to release results prior to the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. And then also the case of the presser, where a warrant of arrest was issued out to a representative of an opposition party. These also clearly highlighting some of the electoral infringements that did take place during this particular period. Report back from the ZRP to be able to at least collate what the findings were from those 30 individuals is yet to come, but more importantly also with regards to the presser that took place. I think all in all in large, the Zimbabwe Public Police clearly highlighted that there were no other issues that came out as a result of skirmishes, and generally, as has been reported, it was a peaceful electoral process.
Agreed.
Yeah, very peaceful, and I think it's really important that we acknowledge that fact that perhaps for once in Zimbabwe's elections, the environment has been largely peaceful. There were expectations that there will be skirmishes, there will be some noise here and there, but I believe Zimbabweans managed to hold themselves back, to be able to restrain themselves and manage the electoral environment very, very peacefully. I want us to dissect and perhaps look at the issues of the language. I've been going through social media platforms and so forth. There's a kind of language that we are seeing. People trying to provoke, whether it's it's basically, I would admit, it's coming from those who think they lost, or those who outrightly lost. There seems to be some provocation in terms of we need to go to war, we need to fight back, we need to get into the streets and so forth. What kind of behavior should be encouraged for the people of Zimbabwe to be able to move forward now as one people? I believe words are very powerful and they matter. How people speak and how they respond to situations determines the course that they take. What is the language that is expected of people today?
I think for me, clearly it must start with respecting the other's opinion, his voice, his choice. There is a sense, and I think part of it is also perhaps a historical thing sometimes, that if I'm in urban area and perhaps I'm more educated, and the person who is in the rural area who has a different political choice than me is dumb. And lack of understanding that you could be in an urban area, you have a particularly difficult economic condition, but me, I'm in tobacco. I have a different situation from yourself.
I understand.
So my choice doesn't mean I cannot see. There is that sense, I can see that dichotomy. So that dichotomy. And so I think there needs to be a respect. I mean, I have heard people saying, why don't you call your parents and tell them, I'm sending you money. Change your vote, otherwise I'm going to stop. Are you assuming that your parent has no thought simply because they're in the rural area? Why don't you ask them about their context and learn from it? But equally, it's also important for the 52%, 46% to understand that the person who is on the 44%, who has voted, has a different socio-economic condition than I have. And most are traders, and therefore they vote differently. They vote differently. That respect is fundamental. That respect is fundamental.
Very fundamental indeed. We are taking a break. Stay tuned. You're watching ZBC TV. We are analyzing the speech by President Emmerson Mnangagwa, President-elect, after he's been announced the winner of the 2023 general elections. We'll be back.
Elections, let us work together as a family. 2023 elections, let's work together as a family.
Declaration of results of the 2023 presidential election. Busha Joseph Makamba, Free Zim, Congress, 18,816 votes, which constitutes 0.4% of the vote. Chamisa Nelson, CCC, 1,967,343, which constitutes 44% of the vote. Chikohora Trust Tapiwa ZCPD 10,230, which constitutes 0.2% of the vote. Kasiamuru Blessing ZIPP 13,060, constituting 0.3% of the vote. Maduku Lovemore NCA 5,323, constituting 0.1% of the vote. Mnangagwa Emerson Dambudzo ZANU-PF 2,350,711, constituting 52.6% of the vote. Mbaiwa Wilbert Archibald NPC 53,517, constituting 1.2% of the vote. Muzorewa Gwinyai Henry, the UANC 7,053, constituting 0.2% of the vote. Monzora Douglas Togarase MDCT 28,883, constituting 0.6% of the vote. Valerio Elizabeth Isabel UZA 6,989, constituting 0.2% of the vote. Wilson Harry Peter DOP 6,743, constituting 0.2% of the vote. The total votes cast were 4,561,221. Total valid votes cast were 4,468,668. Total votes rejected 92,553. Our total voter population was 6,623,511. The voter turnout was 68.9%. Now, therefore, I, Priscilla Makanyara Chigumba, the chairperson of the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, in terms of Section 110, subsection 3, do hereby declare that Mnangagwa Emerson Dambudzo of ZANU-PF Party has received 2,350,711 votes out of 4,468,730 valid votes cast, which are more than half the number of valid votes cast in the presidential election. Therefore, Mnangagwa Emerson Dambudzo of ZANU-PF Party is declared duly elected President of the Republic of Zimbabwe with effect from 26 August 2020.
(2023) Zimbabwe decides.
And on the 23rd of August, Zimbabweans decided. We continue with our discussion here. Mr. Wengwere, you referred to the issues of why Zimbabweans need to integrate.
Yes.
Why the 52% and the 44% need to integrate, which is very, very, very important going forward.
Critical because in a dual economy, naturally voting preferences are likely to be different. Mm-hmm. But if you as individuals within those different contexts don't understand each other, you're likely to either disparage each other, and worse within a social media context, mm-hmm. where those in the urban centers are the ones that are on Twitter, mm-hmm. on X, I don't know what they voted, and on Facebook and the like, and the other guys don't have the same access, and you're likely to see, just because I have the right, I'm on X, therefore it means the other one who exercise their X does not think.
We have the same dividing line. I'm going to hand over to Farai soon.
Yeah.
The same dividing line between those in the diaspora and those back home in Zimbabwe. Those outside seem to think that people in Zimbabwe voted for ZANU-PF because they don't think.
And because they are coerced.
And yes.
Yeah, and if you look at the stats, I sit on the Agriculture Marketing Authority board myself, and I'll tell you, the growth in agriculture in this country is real. The economy of agriculture is real. The experience of people in agriculture is real. But equally, the experience on currency in urban areas is real. And therefore, we have two realities. The two realities, yes, this one is an unfortunate reality in an urban center. This one has been a good reality. So this one is voted for ZANU-PF. This one who is in this has voted for the opposition, for CCC. What we are now presented with now is, instead of having a dual economy, because we can see it creates polarity and opportunities for detractors to come in and entrench those differences. How do we create one value chain, whether from mining and agriculture, and grow our manufacturing base
in
that
the
then
cities.
supports that? So that we have one. You know, varongwa kudarira mashotsi uchibva kumusha asi tunemba kuri kuborodhel and all that, because the economy was integrated. We need to go back to that base.
We need to go back to that, Farai.
More reports also that did come up were questions around inclusivity of the media, most notably the public broadcaster, to the candidates during the electoral process, most notably those of opposition movements, concerns as to whether enough coverage for the campaigns, enough coverage on news and current affairs stories was done. But at the same time, also concerns around as to whether the opposition in their own capacity were willing to be able to take up the prerequisite spaces that were given. I think for the point of clarity within the media space, it's important to note that there is electoral space that's given to all candidates by virtue of the public broadcaster's mandate. And as a result of that, what we did find was that those of the opposition party were reluctant to be able to take up that particular opportunity and platform, be it on whatever merit they had considered, that is up to their own devices. However, the public broadcaster had ensured that the platforms were available to them to take advantage of. However, throughout other media platforms, we did note that the opposition and all other the ruling party did have a considerable coverage extensively. However, questions were raised with regards to the public broadcaster.
Very true. Polarity creates perception. If I think that you don't like me, I'm likely, if you invite me, I'll say, no, why come to a platform because you're going to hammer me. So I think it also calls upon engagement, but we must admit, though, towards the end, there was really great improvement, across the board. It's not just the public broadcaster; it's also the private media that had also a lot to learn. But maybe going forward, as media, we also need to create a common view of how do we cover elections. Otherwise, we'll be like America, Fox versus CNN versus, and all that. And there are always those differences. Some of them are healthy, but some of them they become too extreme. They become also detrimental to national development.
But still, I believe on that, Mr. Wengwere, what exactly should be the best way forward in terms of opposition parties taking up that offer? I'm testimony that as a public broadcaster, that offer was actually given to opposition parties to say, come, there's space, there is airtime. Some, of course, it was free according to the law. Some, of course, was supposed to be paid for. But then there's a perception that is out there that says we can never, ever be on the national broadcaster because they are not favoring us. And yet, at the end of the day, they will also again cry and say we were not covered. What should be done?
I agree. I think that you're right. Again, like I said, it's about trust. It's about perception. If that perception is entrenched, you may find it's again communication. Remember, communication is an exchange of meaning. If meanings on the different sides are held differently, never mind what you say, the other guy will say, but you don't like me, and therefore, and then the same person will also then complain about you and say, but you didn't call me, say, but I called you. And they're like, my sense is that as media, maybe what we need to do is way before elections. Perhaps we need to engage with stakeholders and say, and really publish the rules of engagement so that the public out there get to know that, okay, I've given X the platform, they refused today, they didn't, they came yesterday, and the like. It's a complex thing. It's about learning to trust each other, learning to work with each other.
And of course, learning to trust and work with each other is what Zimbabweans need to do right now. The 2023 general elections are over, and what remains is the processes that come after the election, but particularly the unity of the people of Zimbabwe as they build their country together. President Emmerson Mnangagwa always on record as saying, Nyika, inovakwa neve nevayo, ilizwe lakiwa ngabalikazi balo. At this juncture, we are going to take a break. I'm now also going to release my guests. That's Mr. Mnyaradzi Wengwere, our analyst, as well as my co-host Farai Gwaze. We'll also be joined later on when we return from the break by other analysts. That's Dr. Leopold Chakanyuka and Dr. Mapovire, to analyze further the other issues around the electoral processes and what we need to be looking at going forward as a country. Do join us when we return.
Thank you.
2023, Zimbabwe decides.
2023 elections, let us work together as a family. 2023 elections, let us work together as a family.
Declaration of results of the 2023 presidential election. Busha Joseph Makamba, Free Zim Congress, 18,816 votes, which constitutes 0.4% of the vote. Chamisa Nelson, CCC, 1,967,343, which constitutes 44% of the vote. Chikohora Trust Tapiwa, ZCPD, 10,230, which constitutes 0.2% of the vote. Kasiamuru Blessing, ZIPP, 13,060, constituting 0.3% of the vote. Maduku Lovemore, NCA, 5,323, constituting 0.1% of the vote. Mnangagwa Emmerson Dambudzo, ZANU-PF, 2,350,711, constituting 52.6% of the vote. Mbaiwa Wilbert Archibald, NPC, 53,517, constituting 1.2% of the vote. Muzorewa Gwinyai Henry, the UANC, 7,053, constituting 0.2% of the vote. Monzora Douglas Togarase, MDCT, 28,883, constituting 0.6% of the vote. Valerio Elizabeth Isabel, UZA, 6,989, constituting 0.2% of the vote. Wilson Harry Peter, DOP, 6,743, constituting 0.2% of the vote. The total votes cast were 4,561,221. Total valid votes cast were 4,468,668. Total votes rejected, 92,553. Our total voter population was 6,623,511. The voter turnout was 68.9%.